Your son is a remarkable young man. He has highly advanced cognitive skills. He has more in common with Einstein or Mozart than he does with us. I'd like to work with your son. Help him develop the skills he'll need to lead a full life.
It's not going to happen. The world is not a friendly place, and that's where he needs to learn to live.
How did you get into financial consulting? How did you get into financial consulting? My dad was an accountant. You know, he had the whole shtick. The dorky pocket protector.
I have a pocket protector.
That's a nice one.
Do you like puzzles? Tell me what you see. It was taken 3 years ago by an undercover agent.
It's the same person.
He was spotted in Tehran, Tel Aviv, and Naples. This guy risks his life uncooking the books for some of the scariest people on the planet. Drug cartels, arms brokers, money launderers, assassins. Who survives this kind of clientele? Imagine the secrets this guy has.
What are you doing in here?
Who are you?
You're different. Sooner or later, different scares people.
I have difficulty socializing with other people, even though I want to.
There's people looking for you.
If their secrets get too big, killing you may be the cost of doing business. If you go down this road, you can't go back.
Some of my clients are quite dangerous.
Why would your clients follow you? You're an accountant. We have to go to the police.
Police can't protect you.
So who is he?
The accountant.
Like a CPA accountant?
Not quite.
That was the 2016 movie The Accountant, which serves as further proof that critics have no idea what they're saying, except the Monday Morning Critic, which is your favorite podcast. But in all seriousness, you know, critics gave that movie on Rotten Tomatoes a 50%. I mean, give me a break. When you look at what the audience gave it, they gave it an 80% fresh. And just a word of advice, if you're ever looking on Rotten Tomatoes, the only number that matters, truthfully, is what the audience thinks of it. And the audience was dead right on this one. The Accountant was one of the best movies of 2016, without question. And when you go to Rotten Tomatoes, please ignore what the critics say. They have no idea what they're saying. Most critics are about promoting their own agenda, and they're rarely about the movie anymore, about the craft anymore. So absolutely, just focus on what the people think of the movie, and it's really the only number that matters. Speaking of people that matter and greatness here, my next guest is an actor. He's been in The Accountant. He's been in Banshee. He's been in Prisoners. He's been in Ozark. He's been in The Bay. He's been in Conspirator. He's been in The Mist. He's been in Sully. He is really an actor's actor. He is great in everything he's in. He was so good in The Accountant as Ben Affleck, when Ben Affleck was younger, his father. Wonderful actor. And I bring you that interview now. And you are listening to the Monday Morning Critic podcast. Today we have actor Robert Treveiler. He has nearly 80 credits in his filmography. We're very lucky to have him. And when you're as good as friends as I am with him, you can call him Rob. Rob, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good, Derek. How are you?
Good. So, Rob, just researching your life, I know you went to high school in New York, if I'm correct. Is that where you spend most of your youth, is in New York?
No, my dad moved a bunch when we were kids. He was in sales, and I was born outside of Chicago, and still my favorite city. And we moved outside of Cleveland after that. So I spent my formative sports years in Cleveland and Chicago. So the Cubs and the Indians were my favorite teams, and they sucked forever. and then we moved to upstate New York. So that's how I came to be in New York. And it was right about the time I went to high school. We moved up there like the end of 8th grade.
Right. But, boy, speaking of baseball, you must have been torn as hell last year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness! So what?
Actually, I thought it was a signal of the apocalypse because the Cubs and the Indians were playing in the World Series. So I wanted to sell everything and move to the mountains.
So now you reside in North Carolina, correct?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Great. So I gotta ask, when is the moment when you say, you know what, acting is for me? This is what I have to do.
Oh gosh, when I was a kid, I'd watch TV and I'd go, I can do it better than him. and then, my dad was Joe businessman. He was pushing me in that direction, and I don't know. I was just compelled to do it. I just felt like it was that was my path. That was it. So I tried the business world for a while, which was good. I mean, it was fine. But then I junked it all, and I just started. I started late in the game, really. I mean, I had all the training in school, but I didn't start until I was 26, 7, something like that. Auditioning and getting little stuff, and then getting bigger stuff, and then stealing roles from people in California. When the movie of the week heyday was going on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, but it was about like that. I felt compelled to do it. Had to do it. That's what I am.
Yeah, and that's one hell of a risk when you say, you know what, I'm going to put aside the guaranteed paycheck for one that may never happen.
Yeah, I know. That's what freaked my dad out. He's like, do you know how many actors make a living? He's like, 1%. I was like, well, I'm going to be that guy. So yeah, I started doing it, and I've never looked back, and I've been very fortunate.
Yes, you have, and you've been very good. What about your training or a mentor? I know you start late in the game, so it must be much more difficult to acquire that stuff this late, that late in the game. I mean, I don't think 26 is super late, but how do you get the training and the mentor? How does that come about?
Well, in college, I was drawn to it. I always performed in high school, did the talent shows and the goofy plays and all that bullshit. And then in college, just to meet some electives, I was pre-law in college, but to meet some electives, I took theater, and there were two fantastic instructors at the University of Potsdam State University, up in way up by Canada, and one was from England, and worked with on the Thames, Shakespeare on the Thames, whatever it is, and I mean just way qualified to be where she was. And then another gentleman named Bill Champney, who they were just excellent. And they boiled the craft down into something tangible and accessible for me. And so that was that training, and I went to the University of Arizona for a year, and there was a guy there who was excellent, but they were all electives. I was not a major in theater, and I could tell I was better suited for film because the in theater, the director or the professor, whomever, would stand at the back of the house, and they would constantly yell at me. They'd go, louder! They're like, you're great. You're very subtle. You need to be louder. You need to be bigger. And I was like, I don't want to be. This is how I want to be. But you have to adjust for theater. But so my natural rhythm and the way I work is more suited to film and television. So
and I tell all my guests that have a theater background, and I sound like a broken record because I say this in all my interviews with actors. I don't know how anyone can do theater. It would scare the hell out of me. The idea of
theater, I really do. I just don't have an opportunity to do it enough, and unfortunately, it doesn't pay the bills. So, but I learned my craft in the theater, and then you apply it to film. It's just a finer point.
Yeah, and I thought I read somewhere, Robert, where you do some teaching. Is that accurate?
What's that? Say again?
You do some teaching. I thought I read that somewhere where you teach acting. Is that accurate?
I did. We're in the Southeast, and it's its own market with regard to the opportunities that you get. They've become, you can go for bigger roles more often now than you've ever been able to. But when we were starting out, it was all supporting day player stuff, and they're looking for something specific that I feel like I'm dialed into. So I teach a class, or I have taught a class that is essentially an audition class, geared for that work for an actor who has training in this market,
Yeah.
And, and I enjoy it because I get something out of it too. It keeps me lubricated, for when I'm going to work or audition.
Now, are these people of all ages when you did it, or are they mostly adults? Or?
No, essentially adults who, I try to vet them as best I can, who have some film experience, who have some training, because I'm not there to, I don't feel like I'm there to teach them how to act. I'm there to teach them to apply their craft to this medium.
Right. And what's the question you get most often? So in other words, you teach it. I mean, you're an accomplished actor. When I say accomplished, I mean you've been in big movies and major TV shows. I mean, if I was going to be an actor, I would be taking notes on everything you said. So what question?
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, what question do you get most often, or do you get a lot? I guess I should say.
I don't know if there's any one common question. There's a lot of, how do you get booked so much? I get that, and it's like, it's a numbers game, and I'm fortunate. I mean, I fit a slot that they use a lot. I can be the guy next door. I can be the doctor. I can be the lawyer. I can be the FBI guy. And so I'm an everyman. And so there's work there for me. I wish I was a character actor and really specific, and could dial into something that I could make bank on forever. But that's not who I am. I'm an everyman.
Yeah.
And so essentially, from that point, I'm telling people to find what's unique about them and what's most marketable about them, and exploit that. Use that, because that's how you're going to work.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Rob, is it good or bad to be typecast in a sense that, I had a guest on earlier that I don't think he was frustrated, but all he seemed, and he admitted this, that all he seemed to play was, the old racist or the old cop, or is it good or bad? I mean, how does an actor look at that?
I don't think I've been typecast because, like I said, who I am, because I'm an everyman. So I don't think I get typecast in that regard. And it's the nature of the business. If they find something that they can grab easily and plug into a hole, and that's that.
Right. Right.
And they're all about it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there are people with specific looks or specific, a specific energy about them that puts them in that position, and they're probably far better actors than that. But that's how they're going to make their living, So I can understand the frustration.
Yeah,
but, I really haven't experienced it.
Yeah, I don't think you're in that mold. I don't think you're in that mold, but I think I sense frustration on his end, that he was a little frustrated that he couldn't kind of. Well, he was coming, he did some comedies and so forth, but it was kind of a double-edged sword, he was kind of getting work, which is great for an actor, but it's kind of that same old, I've got to go play this guy again, and I could sense there was a little frustration, but I mean, to get work is to get work as an actor, I suppose,
Yeah, I mean, as an actor, you want to do something different every time. We get to experience all these great things vicariously, but I've been a heart surgeon, and so I had to research how to do open heart surgery because I did it, on camera, and it was a lot of fun to do, and to immerse yourself in that and different stuff. So if you're not getting that, if you're getting the same thing every time, I can understand the frustration, but I get it. I understand that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about doing your research with roles. I mean, you get guys like Daniel Day-Lewis who lived in the woods for Last of the Mohicans for 6 months. He was skinning animals, and he came back.
I know, he's begging his wife's forgiveness when he got the Oscar.
That's right. That's right. And you have a guy as much as an idiot as he is away from the camera, on camera, Shia LaBeouf's a great actor. He's another guy that, when he takes roles, he doesn't take showers, he cuts himself up. Christian Bale almost killed himself. Christian Bale
goes to extremes. Yeah, and part of my training was method, and a lot of that can be associated with method, and I love that. It's really you can't beat experience, because if you've experienced it, it's going to translate more truthfully, I think.
Right. Right.
So why not if you're able to?
So I guess
if you're able to,
right.
You know, if you have an army of trainers and you can get completely ripped for a role, why not? You know? I mean, why not?
Right. So I guess my question to you is, I mean, he got Bale got down to 121 for The Machinist, and then for The Dark Knight, he got back to 200 plus. How far would you go?
You know, wow. I haven't been presented with something like that, but I can understand the attraction, and I would probably jump in with both feet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of actors have done that, and I give them credit for it. And my last question about teaching, Rob, is that are there mistakes you see a lot that actors are making that you wish you could kind of say, "Oh, don't do that," or is there something that you see from your experience that you want to really impart to those students and tell them not to do it?
Wow. I think that the most common thing is to just not trust who you are and to try to manufacture a moment rather than essentially responding as yourself. Layered with whatever the character is, information that you have. So you flavor it, but the thing is, my point a lot of times to them is if you've been called in for something, you're 90% there because, you look like this person. You look like the type that they're looking for this particular role. So you don't have to do too much. Trust the words, and just make them as truthful as you can to yourself, and by and large, it'll be believable. If you try to manufacture anything, it jumps out. It takes, a second.
Right.
And that's how long to look at your audition, about a second.
Yeah, and there's I've had actors on that have talked about the environment on a set. They some directors make a set so tense that people can't kind of it's like any work environment. When people are stressed, nobody's very productive. I mean, I think it's old school thinking, but then there's the flip side to that where it's some directors are very relaxed, very chill. Do you find that to be the case in something where you show up on some sets, and I know you were in Banshee, we're going to get to that in a moment, and that's one of those shows that I think has multiple directors, and so one guy I was interviewing about another show said, we had one director when he showed up, we wanted it just to be done with. It was so miserable, and then when they had other directors, they gave their best. Do you find that to be the case too, Rob?
Well, I'm always going to do my homework, and I'm going to show up and do my best regardless of that particular situation, because there are guest directors that come in and they don't know the rhythm of the show, they don't know the rhythm of the set, and they're in a tough spot. They're a hired gun, and it's difficult for them, and some handle it better than others. But I think if you remain focused on what you got to do, it doesn't really matter. You know the DP, and you know the AD, and you know how this is going to go, essentially, and just do your work. And for the most part, for the vast majority of my career, every set has been great. There've been very, very few sets that had the type of energy issues you're talking about, And I've been around it a couple times, and it sucks. It does suck.
Right.
But you still got to do your work, so you got to be able to compartmentalize and shut that out and do your stuff, as best you can.
Yeah, I guess it's not just acting. We've all been down the road where we've had a shithead boss and who doesn't get it, and I guess acting would be no different than that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you: because
it's such a collaborative thing that if 110 out of that 120 person crew is on it, the 10 that aren't will wreck it. They'll just wreck it. They'll make it something that it shouldn't be, because it's really a joy to do our work. To be able to tell a story is a great thing. And like I said, by and large, every single person I work with loves what they do, and it makes the sets a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of the things that always piques my interest, Rob, is when I see when I have guests on, I wish I had a camera to see what their family members or close friends, like, their reaction when they see you on screen. Like, what has the reaction been of your family and your friends when they see you up on screen or they see you in great shows like Ozark and Banshee? I mean, is it overwhelming? I mean, are they like, wow, I'm so proud of you? Like, that fascinates me. I can never wrap my head around that concept.
Yeah, it's great. It's great because I get to hear from people I've known my entire life and people that I haven't spoken to forever, and they'll see something and touch base, and so it's great in that regard. I like it a lot. And we do what we do to entertain. So if we get a response, then we've done our job. If we get a positive response, we've done our job. And my friends, when I was in college, when I was training, actually, I was real serious about my craft, but I was a jock, and everybody that I knew was a jock or a goofball, just a total goober. And, they were all like giving me shit about being an acting.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I'm so glad you said that because, when I was in high school and college, there was definitely, if you were in drama, you were stereotyped in a certain way. Absolutely, yeah. For sure. And I totally agree. But there is a stereotype that people associate to that. And now it's like, look at all these athletes that now want to become actors. Look how cool it is. Sure. To be in drama now is like being on the baseball team 20, 30 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I think there's, art doesn't get lost in the long run. If you, whatever medium it is, art touches the human soul, period. It does. And it doesn't matter how much technology we have or, how many diversions we have or whatever. It's been a constant throughout civilization. And, as long as that's happening, then it's vital, and it's worth doing. And I kind of lost track of the question.
No, you've answered it. But I got to tell you, you've taken a lot of risks in your life, whether it's, to hell with what my friends think, or, I know my dad wants me to stick with a business, and you take those risks, Rob. That's ballsy along the way. I know we kind of touched on that earlier, but still, I think that really is a testament to your passion for this thing.
Well, thanks. And, the payoff is that I get to do what I love to do. And, whenever I get to work, I love it. It's where I'm the happiest, other than with my wife.
Right. And, very nice.
And so, I'm just really lucky.
Have you ever been in a situation where you're on a set with I'm not going to go through the names. You've been through with a shitload of, A+ actors. Have you ever kind of said to yourself, am I good enough to be in the room with this guy or this girl? Am I good enough?
Oh, sure. Early on, for sure. You're intimidated by somebody's stature, but, everybody's kind of trying to find the same thing. Actors are still trying to find the same thing. We're trying to find that connection or that moment, and you've got to be able to connect with that actor to make it believable. And so virtually everybody I've ever worked with, regardless of how they are outside of the set or in their personal life, how it might be a train wreck, in that moment they're there. They're there, and that makes us equal. And so I got over that pretty quickly. And now it's like, all right, well, I can swing the bat with anyone, so come on.
Yeah,
bring it.
That's the attitude you have to have. Absolutely. Can you think of a specific example early on when you weren't so confident with a certain person, or is it just a general kind of thing?
I did a movie called The Perfect Tribute. This was a TV film a long time ago. It was a Lincoln retrospective, and fuck me, now I'm fucking forgetting it. Lincoln. Jason Robards played Lincoln.
Wow.
And Jason Robards is an icon.
Sure.
And I played John Hay, who was Lincoln's secretary, and I was essentially run a show. I was there for a long time on that particular show, and Jack Bender directed it. Jack Bender's did Lost, and he's gone on to produce a bunch of stuff, and he's still a really good director and still works a lot. And and I respect the guy and I like him. But all my stuff was with Jason, all of it. Everything was with Jason.
Wow.
And, you know, I was like, holy shit. You know, I mean, this dude, Academy Award winner, awesome. He's awesome.
Yes.
And he was playing Lincoln, and, you know, I got in there, and there were a bunch of questions I had as an actor, and I didn't know how approachable. I didn't know protocol. I didn't know how approachable he could be. And so I finally just said, fuck it. You know, I got to work with this guy. And I asked one of the ADs, I said, can I knock on his trailer door and just ask him, you know, I'm in my fucking honey wagon over here in the hole, and he's in this giant trailer. I said, can I just talk to him? And he goes, sure. Yeah, go ahead. So I went over and beat on the door, and I asked Jason. He goes, yeah, come on in. So we came in, and we went through the whole fucking script. We sat there for because we waited forever to go to set. So it was like 2 hours.
Wow.
And we just went through the script, you know, and it just made everything. It took all that what you were describing away.
Yeah.
Instantly, you know, it just went away.
Well, one of the things that I was looking at as it applied to your career and outside of, you know, all your awesome work, this is what really attracted me to this, Rob, is the directors that you've worked for. Like, I've never had a guest that, you know, Gavin O'Connor, Denis Villeneuve, Barry Levinson, Robert Redford, my favorite of all time, Frank Darabont, Clint Eastwood. I mean, I just want to pick these apart a little bit. You were so goddamn good in The Accountant. Talk about that movie and your experiences with that.
That was a great experience. That was awesome. I read for it. You know, you don't know what you're reading for certain times in this market, you know, because you don't get they don't give you the information, the breadth and scope of the role. So I think it was part of a search for that character, and I read for it, and I got called back, and I went down. It was shot in Atlanta, and I went down there and met with Gavin, and it was a great experience because we sat in that room and picked all the script and scenes apart for about an hour. And, you know, usually a callback lasts about 4 minutes. You know?
Right.
I mean, you go in, you do it, and then you leave. And it was so good, and he was so passionate about it. And I love the writing. Bill Dubuque wrote the screenplay, and he's brilliant. And he's also the executive producer of Ozark. And you know, it was just one of those great experiences. The experience on set was just as good. You know, I mean, Gavin is all about the process. You know, he's an actor's director. He lets us find it. He lets us play. You know, talk about a set to be intimidated on. You know, J.K. Simmons won the Academy Award while we were doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and he's brilliant. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, and he treated, you know, as far as I saw, he directed everybody exactly the same. He treated everybody the same. Ben, everybody. You know, now he and Ben are buddies, so they have more shorthand. You know, they have a shorthand between them. So, you know, it's different than the rest of us, but still, he was just great. I really like Gavin O'Connor a lot, and I think for as complex and dense and as that script was, and as many balls in the air that he had to make it work, I think it came off really well.
Yeah, I love that movie, and I love your role in that movie. You play a father that how I think most dads would have reacted the way you did. I mean, it's a tough role to play for you, and you really you nailed it. And I got to say, you know, it's this is a perfect example of one of those movies where critics don't know what the hell they're talking about, and the people love it. You know, it's the perfect movie for that. You know, it's wonderful. Yeah. So, and then you have Banshee, which is maybe the most underrated show of the last 10 years. 4 seasons, nobody talks about it, and it's so freaking good. A lot of people on that set that were people have never heard of, but are just great actors. How did you like your time on Banshee?
You know, I liked it. I love every show I get to work on. And that was actually shot here in Charlotte, so I was able to work from home, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it never happens. I'm always traveling, working. So that was a great thing. And And I like the concept of the show as well. There just aren't many pulpy shows done anymore. And I thought it was a good nod to shows like that, or scripts that were really back in the 50s. That's when they did that pulpy stuff.
Right.
And I thought they did a great job of making that current and raising the stakes. And the amount of violence on that show was staggering.
Yeah, you're right. At times you watch that show and it's like, am I watching, softcore or whatever here? And then it's and then you're watching violence. But you know what? But there's a great story to be told, and it's legitimately good acting. People have to give this show a chance, and then later on you're in this phenomenal movie, Prisoners, with maybe a director that many consider to be one of the newest sensations around, and that's Denis Villeneuve. He's so goddamn good, Denis Villeneuve.
He is good. He is really good. And and that was another thing that was, that came last second. It was, they were trying to find that person everywhere, and they didn't. And I read, and he was like, "You're the only one. You're the only one." And that was good. I mean, I thought that movie was good too.
It's just underrated.
Dylan Minnette, that played the son in that movie, played my son in a Christmas movie a number of years back, 10 years ago.
Wow.
Christmas Without a Santa Claus. This thing just went into the ethers. I mean, whatever. It was one of those NBC Christmas movies.
Right.
But he got to play my son when he was about 10.
Wow.
And he's doing great now too.
Yeah, it's just that these movies are so powerful. And is it tough to get, like, is there a big difference between, because we just talked about him in this random order, is there a big difference between a guy like Gavin O'Connor and Denis Villeneuve with the way they approach things?
Every director is different. Every single director is different. Bob Redford was really hands off. I mean, he was very hands off, and Clint Eastwood was probably the most relaxed director I've ever seen on set. He was 84. He's worked with the same crew every single movie he's ever shot, and he knows exactly what he wants. And he walks in and he goes, "That was great." I mean, he's just so casual, and so every director's different, and if you're able to spend enough time with them, I think that's when you find the most viable parts of any director you get to work with. And some I've only had a brief encounter. I can't really judge it or gauge it, because I haven't worked with them enough. But others that I have, Frank Darabont, love Frank, and Gavin. I mean, they're just great. The ones that I've been able to spend enough time with that it counts, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic that Barry Levinson directed Robert Redford in perhaps the best sports movie of all time, in The Natural. It's
Barry was great too. Loved him.
So let me ask you, The Mist is one of the best movies, again, that, people love it. It's got an ending that just blows you away.
Right.
I've heard people talk about Frank's style. Frank strikes me as one of these guys, and he's my all-time personal favorite, and I hate to sound very comic bookish by saying that, but I really love his movies. He doesn't put out many, but when he does, they're home runs. What's it like on a set with Frank? He strikes me as a guy that he loves his cast. So when you're cast in his movies, he believes in you 1,000%.
Yeah. Frank was great. He's another one that trusts his actors, and he was a DP initially, so he comes to it from that angle. I don't know if he comes from that angle first. He's very story oriented as well, but he creates a picture that helps you as an actor. I mean, if you look at the monitor and you look at what he's trying to show, and the moment as it relates to the script, certain things will crystallize for you, or did for me when we were working on it, because The Mist is kind of an obtuse movie. You've got these things outside that you can't see, and we're pretending, and we're in a grocery store, and we have to be scared for 6 weeks. We're shooting in this grocery store for 6 weeks. And
you're right.
And after 3 weeks, it's like, okay, you're terrified. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm really not, Frank. I'm not terrified at all. But and then we would do something or discover something, and it would work again. It would start working again, and so, he was pretty upfront and clear about what he liked and what he didn't like. And when I first got to set, I said, "Is there anything you want to talk about with my character?" And he goes, "Nope." He goes, "You got it." He goes, "Nope, you got it. You're the guy. You're the only guy. So just do what you do." And I was like, "Okay, all right."
So it must be one of these things where, Rob, when you go through these, I mean, it must be like learning from the best in the business. I mean, you must take lessons away, not lessons, but you must take the experiences you have with each of these guys, or girls, whoever's directing, but you must take a little piece of that with you into your next role, which is learning at the highest level.
Yes. I mean, I learned something on every single set. I think it's a lifelong process. So I learned something on every set, and I just feel like it can only help me in subsequent jobs down the road. I mean, it just does.
Right. And the last one I forgot to mention, you were in the Bay, which was great, but Ozark, your most recent thing on Netflix, are you back for the second season?
Yeah, I'm working on the second episode, which is coming up shortly. They just started back.
Oh, very cool.
Second season.
Yes.
And I know I'm working on the second episode, and then I'm going to be in a little later in the season. I don't know the extent to this point. Netflix keeps everything pretty close to the vest. So.
Wow, that's.
Yeah.
You got to be.
But yes, I'm definitely back. Definitely back.
That's exciting. I mean, as an actor, when you hear that, okay, you're a series regular, you're back again, where a lot of people don't know if they're coming back after the first season, because directors sometimes say, or producers say, you know what, I don't know if I want so and so back, and they're in limbo for a while. So when you finally hear you're back, I mean, that's got to be a breath of fresh air for you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I told you earlier, I'm happiest when I work. So anytime that phone call comes, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, one of the last things I wanted to ask you, Rob, was when you talked about the big boom in, the North Carolina when it came to acting, and Georgia too, I guess, is a lot of that tax-based, or is a lot of that, there's some pretty damn good actors in this area. Is it a little bit of both, or is it?
Well, LA. Atlanta has gotten so busy because, Georgia does have their incentive package in place. For producers, it gives them tax credits on anything they spend in the state. And North Carolina had one for a long time. And then when we had the elections a few years back, there was a sweeping conservative agenda that came in. And part of that was eliminating the film incentives. They decided that, 75 or 80% of the money they were making for nothing wasn't enough. They felt like they were giving too much away. So, that was the decision they made that essentially moved all the film work out of the state.
Right.
So Atlanta is hopping, and there's so much going on there. And there are a lot of actors who are coming from LA and New York and, planting themselves in Atlanta because there's so much going on.
Right.
And to this point, I'm able to go down there and work. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and it's funny because in years past it would be just the reverse. People would be going from Atlanta to LA to get that work, and now it's almost the polar opposite. I had to ask you about a movie, Rob, called Above Suspicion. It looks really good, but I can't find anything about it. Is there a release date for that?
Yeah, that was Philip Noyce directed that, who's another really good director.
Yeah, it looks really good.
And I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, I just played, I was just on that for a couple of days. But I don't know when the release date is on that. I haven't heard anything either.
Yeah,
so.
And, his name is Rob Treveiler. Rob, I can't thank you enough. You can find him in the second season of Ozark. He's an actor. You see him in just about everything. He's absolutely one of the best out there. Thank you so much, Rob, for being a guest on the Monday Morning Critic.
Derek, thanks for having me.
Yep.
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? And ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's a silver sun. You best walk her away and watch it shining. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing now. I'm crying, ain't I? Gone to Carolina in my mind. There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. And hey babe, the sky's on fire. I'm dying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Well, dark and silent late last night, I think I might have heard the highway calling. Geese in flight and dogs that bite. The signs that might be omens say I'm going, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. With a holy host of others standing around me, still I'm on the dark side of the moon. And it seems like it goes on like this forever. You must forgive me if I'm up and gone to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from